Good morning. So I'm just down on the inner harbor walking Thomas, and I walked past a tsunami warning sign. We have them all over the lower south coast of BC, but especially where I live in Victoria. And it got me thinking about this piece that I'm working on, that it's stuck. It's like I know it in my head, I can talk about it, but getting it all together in writing is so, oh God, it's just like, I don't know, being in labor or something. It's so frustrating. And so the tsunami warning sign is totally part of it. And so I thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to try to talk about it. And because I feel like it's an important concept, an important piece. And I also have a bunch of stuff going on and I don't know when it's going to get out. So let's try. So I live in this like shockingly beautiful place. I can't turn the camera around right now, but I have some B-roll I'll show you later. But southern BC, all of Cascadia, the Pacific Northwest, like it's just, if you haven't been here, it's fucking unreal. And one of the reasons that it's unreal is because we live in an active tectonic zone, meaning the ocean floor is running into the continent. These are tectonic plates and we live in what's called a subduction zone. So the ocean floor is subducting, going underneath of the continental plate, and it's what creates mountains and all of this natural beauty that we live in. And it is also, this is specifically what the region that gets called Cascadia is, like something like, depending how you measure it, 600 to 1,000 kilometer stretch from sort of northern California all the way up to Alaska, that is in one of the most, if not literally the most dangerous subduction zones in the world. And the problem with being in a subduction zone is that the earthquakes that it creates are devastating, like magnitude 9 and higher. So like Christchurch, the tsunami in Japan, whatever, about a decade ago. And so not only do you have these earthquakes that are just like gonna absolutely be apocalyptic, like action movie bad. Seismologists use words like, devastating and worst in history, and like seismologists don't talk like that, right? Scientists in general, they're very measured, and they talk about how so this area gets an earthquake like that, a subduction zone earthquake like that, every 300 to 500 years for sure, like clockwork. And so it's going to happen. And the last one that happened here was in 1700. So we are exactly in the threshold when it's going to happen. They can't say when, they just know that yes, it will. And recent estimates is it's 37% chance that there's going to be this earthquake is coming in the next 50 years. And the thing is, so not only will the rupture, so the way that it happens is all this tension builds up between these plates. As this denser ocean plate tries to go underneath the continental plate, the plates, they like buckle against each other, and then all this tension stores up, as this is what the buckling happens in the North American plate, and you have to imagine the ocean plate is going underneath my fist, and then eventually so much tension builds up in the system that there's this rupture, and then the continental plate falls down by I can't remember I was watching a video about this last night. It's like 36 inches or something was the last one. So that's 3 feet of displacement. And here's the thing. It creates what's called a compound event or a cascade. And so it's not just the earthquake, it's everything that comes after. There will almost certainly be a tsunami that follows. There will be, they call it liquefaction. And so we have entire cities built on essentially like water and sand, and that the shaking is going to just stir it up. And just like, imagine when you try to walk on the beach after high tide, just as the tide is going out and your feet are like sinking into the loose sand, but hard to get out. Like that, an entire city of Richmond is the city built. It's going to, like, liquefaction is going to just destroy Richmond. And then, there's going to be flooding, there's potentially going to be lots of fires. And so it basically means that there's going to be the one event triggers all the rest of these events. And the reason the reason I'm 5 minutes into explaining all this to you, assuming that you're not also a geography nerd like me, is because I think it is the perfect metaphor for the moment that we're in. I think we are in the moment where there is so much stress building up between these two metaphorical plates that I'm going to tell you about in a second. And I think that the fault, like, I think we're very close to that earthquake happening. It's possible it's already happening. Like, it's possible the shaking's already started. So what am I saying? So remember I told you about the continental plates, right? We have the North American plate that I'm sitting on right now. Like, literally, me and Thomas, we're sitting on it. There's Thomas. So we're sitting on the North American plate, and just in front of us on the ocean that I can see, that is called the Juan de Fuca plate. And so the North American plate in our today's metaphor is all of the visible, measurable economic activity going on in Canada. It's the things, the government, the stuff that shows up in macroeconomic data. The Juan de Fuca plate, the ocean plate, that is the invisible stuff that the data can't measure. And it's loaded. So on the North American plate, the dynamics that we can see right now, we have things like 177% average household debt to income ratios. Sorry, one of the helicopters is taking off and probably drowning me out right now. It's super loud. There's so many seaplanes and helicopters that come in and out of the harbor. It's really pretty. So North American plate, we have household debt to income ratio is out of control. The worst off of us have 433% debt to income ratio right now. Average 177%. Insolvencies, one of the leading insolvency firms in Canada is expecting, they testified to Parliament, our subcommittee on finance has been holding meetings on household debt over the last few weeks. I've been watching them. They had one of the largest firms in Canada, insolvency trustees, come in, and they told the finance committee they are expecting a 20% rise in insolvencies this year, and that will continue through 2027. And honestly, I think that's being like very conservative. The reason why is we have households carrying all of this debt. We're still on the North American plate, okay? It's really important to where I'm going. What we can see is that 50%, half of all mortgages in Canada between now and the end of 2027 are going to renew. The way our mortgages work is that, to be honest, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details, but I believe it's like 5-year renewal cycles. And so what happened is a bunch of people bought homes or renewed their mortgages, refinanced is the word I'm looking for, and during COVID, when rates were really, really low. Rates are no longer really, really low, and they're probably going to not get lower. The way that the macroeconomic interventions are going to work around all this oil stuff is chances are interest rates are going up again. So these folks are going to be renewing their mortgages into, rates that are 50% higher than what they were paying before. So original rate around 2.5%. Now they're going to be renewing into like 4.5%, 5%, 6%. This is in Canada, in most anywhere near an urban center. In most all of southern British Columbia, where I live, it doesn't matter if you're in a major city or not. That kind of renewal is going to add $600, $800, $1,000 a month to your mortgage payment. When you have 177% debt to income ratio and your mortgage goes up that much. Oh, and by the way, most people, there was a survey done by one of our big 5 accounting firms just a month ago or so. The numbers, they're in my essay. I want to say it's 60%. So 2/3 of Canadians are $200 a month away from insolvency. $200 a month. Now the mortgage payment is going up $600, $800, $1,000. Where is that money coming from? Well, you have to go to debt. But the problem is also we have the Strait of Hormuz stuff going on. So we have the price of gas going up. The price of food is going up. It's going to go up way the fuck more. Like, we are not at all registering how much the price of food, like what's going to happen with the food situation. So increase shocks. They call these like economic shocks, right? Where is that money coming from? It's debt. And so the debt goes up and the debt goes up and the debt goes up, and people, we already know this is happening. The annual Joe Debtor study showed us when people are declaring insolvency in Canada right now, which insolvencies are going up, they're going to keep going up. When they declare themselves bankrupt or they go in and try to make a consumer proposal, they have 10.5 credit products on average. That's borrowing to pay for borrowing. By the time they get to the insolvency trustee, they are using payday loans. People are using buy now, pay later to pay for groceries. But the thing is, we can't see buy now, pay later. That's the oceanic plate. That's the stuff that's invisible underneath the ocean. We're not even there yet. We're still on household debt. So what we can measure, what the government can see, is all of these debt dynamics that I just described to you. Now, it's not just households, it's governments. It's governments, and that is the part where I need my notes. It's messy, it's murky, it's hard to track, but on multiple fronts, our government has been borrowing to buy bonds, to inject money into the economy to stave off what is coming in ways that, this is the fucky part, is they have mechanisms that turn borrowing into assets. So when you look at the balance sheet of the government, there is so much more debt than we can see, which is, again, this is over on the oceanic plate, but they of course interact and intersect. And the governments are involved with what are called non-bank financial institutions. And these non-bank financial institutions are things like hedge funds and the different entities that provide what's called private credit. And right now, we are having a big problem with private credit because people can't pay their bills. And so what the financial system does is one of the processes that they undertake is called securitization. And so let's say like a bank gives you a personal line of credit or a mortgage, and they're not super confident about your ability to pay. And so they sell that debt stream to a hedge fund, and the hedge fund says, okay, no problem. We will, if that fails, we will pay. So you are not going to lose money, bank, but you're going to pay us a whatever, like 10% fee ongoing until this thing is settled. And it's basically like buying insurance on a loan. And so the bank sells the debt to the hedge fund and pays the hedge fund to ensure that that debt is going to get paid, which, to be honest, I think I explained that a little bit fucky. But again, we're just like this. I'm just doing my best without my notes. So that is going on. But there's also this other process going on that is extremely, again, opaque, called synthetic risk transfers. It's a very similar process to what I just described, but it is also, it's not just happening between banks and the hedge funds, it's happening between governments and hedge funds. And so now we get over onto the oceanic plate, the Wanapika plate, the under the ocean, the shit that we cannot see, that we cannot measure because we do not have the proper tools and insights. Fintech has just like leapfrogged way past the speed of technological innovation, has surpassed, right? Like regulators are just, they're not even chasing their tails. They're just like standing on the beach looking around being like, the fuck is going on? And meanwhile, fintech's out there with buy now, pay later. The hedge funds are doing these securitized loan products. And the thing is not only can we not see it, but it's like, this is very 2008. This is very much what happened in 2008 is we had all of this invisible risk inside of the system that people could not see, that resolved so much of it, the like fault line of all of it was, can normal people pay their bills? Normal people cannot pay their bills right now. And so there is an incredible and at like atomic bomb amount of risk is built up inside of these systems. The things you can't see, buy now, pay later debt, the things you can't see, synthetic risk transfers, all of these layers of securitization, just like we did in 2008. We just used new words for it. And then on top of that, we cannot see a huge majority of the economic activity going on with independent workers. And so here, this part's really, 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 really important. So over the last, whatever, since the 70s, how many years is that, 50 years, corporations have been downsizing, right-sizing, stripping workers away as fast as they can, turning employees into contractors. And so now you have a huge swath of the economy that is doing work independently. They're essentially functioning as entrepreneurs, even if they want to be employees. Solo small businesses, people like me, independent contractors that are selling our services back into the market because jobs don't exist, or because, whatever, we wanted it, supposedly. And when you work independently, when you are any type of entrepreneur, whether you employ other people, whether you are out on your own, unless you form a corporation and make yourself an employee of that corporation, you don't qualify for employment insurance, and your income only shows up on your taxes. It shows up nowhere else. It's not showing up in labor force surveys. So when we look at like the unemployment rate, when we look at people on employment insurance, all of these things that the government can see over on the North American plate, the things we can see, people like me are not in that data. And so when our income streams get disrupted over on the other plate, when someone like me loses a client, or when AI starts doing the tasks for our clients that we used to do, it's not visible. And so we have in the, these conversations around AI in the labor market, Stanford, Yale, all these like very credible institutions are putting out these studies are like, no detectable AI disruption in the labor market. Cool. According to the data that you can see that you're only using data about employees, T4 employees, people that the government can see. Sure, maybe AI is not having a big impact, because a lot of jobs in the labor market, when you're employed by a company, you usually have like all kinds of cross-functional responsibilities. It's very difficult for AI to do cross-functional, complex human work at any scale. It's not actually going very well right now. However, what AI is exceptional at are tasks. It's very good at research. It's getting increasingly good at writing. It's exceptional at synthesis and analysis. There are so many things. It's getting very good at design, very good at pumping out slide decks. So a lot of things, tasks that got unbundled and disaggregated from jobs when we started to lay people off en masse, and people like me started to sell our services back to the market as researchers and analysts and these kinds of things. Companies can just do that now with AI. And so they'll just, reduce your contract by 50% and be like, yeah, we need you for the more complex stuff, but we don't really need you anymore for the research that we used to pay you to do. And so your income dries up by 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%. Maybe an entire contract gets canceled. That isn't showing up anywhere. And so we have, depending what numbers you use, at the low end, we have about 3.5 million Canadians earning a living like that in the ways that I just described, that are vulnerable to the impacts on sort of drying up work from AI disruption, but also just from contraction, because in periods of uncertainty, people just stop spending. Everyone starts acting defensively. They kind of move inward, like, oh fuck, we don't know what's going on. We better just like eliminate risk everywhere that we can. And so we have about 3.5 million Canadians estimate full-time making their living in ways the government can't see, up to possibly 9 million. That's half of the Canadian labor force making some kind of income. Maybe not all of it, but like, you know, little bit of Uber driving on the weekend, or selling services into a platform, or like an Etsy, maybe a little Etsy side hustle. All of that is invisible. Half of Canadians are earning invisible income. All of it vulnerable to the shocks going on right now, to fear-based contraction, to AI displacement, to the sort of overall economic conditions, to rising costs, to having their profit margin eaten because transportation costs have gone up, because it costs more to mail shit, because there's just at every turn there are added costs on the individual, are added costs on businesses. And so that is all invisible. And then you have people accumulating invisible debts in buy now, pay later. You have governments and hedge funds accumulating tons of risk in ways that are invisible. Oh, there's these birds just chirping away. It's distracting and also kind of beautiful. And we have plane landing. Let's take a break and watch this plane land. I think I fucked that up. I think you can't see the plane lands. It's very hard. You can't just turn your camera around. You can't just like do the little button. Anyway, where was I? Visible versus invisible risk. So, in the finance committee meetings I was watching, one of the things that came up is that these invisible workers, the ones that are super vulnerable, at really big risk of having income streams eaten up, they are also totally unprotected. So a couple of the MPs that were asking questions of witnesses were talking about how 50% of the Canadian labor force is not eligible for employment insurance. So when their income streams contract, when they have disruptions that make it impossible for them to work, or would, if they were employees, otherwise essentially be a de facto effective layoff, those same people can't get employment insurance. And so now your mortgage is going up, your fuel costs are going up, your groceries are going up. You maybe have no work, or your income is contracting, but your costs are rising, and you can't get any help. You will end up insolvent. And that's why I said earlier, I believe the 20% insolvency prediction, or like forecast rather, by Hoyes Mikkelos that they gave to the finance committee is so conservative and so absolutely not sufficient for this moment. And the thing is, so much of the risk storing up in these plates, the tension building between the visible and invisible parts of our economy, that risk, fundamentally, a huge portion of it reduces to the ability of households to pay their bills. And so many of us cannot pay our bills right now. And so I don't know what happens from here. I can't, like a seismologist, I can't tell you when the earthquake happens, and I can't tell you even for sure if there's tsunamis and liquefaction and all that to follow. Like, we've had big earthquakes off of our coast that have not produced tsunamis. They've not been the big subduction ones, but they've also not produced tsunamis. So we don't ever know how complex events are going to play out. And I think we're about to see that fault line crack. I don't understand how we could have, and to be fair, like, there's so much more. I'm just like riffing from what's in my head, but there is so much more. We're seeing this really not good contraction in the private credit market. We're seeing this huge slowdown in real estate that I haven't even gotten into. Most of the Canadian economy is built on real estate. We're seeing freelancer platforms, stocks tanking to nothing. We're seeing the big thing. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He's the only CEO that made it through the 2008 financial crisis with his job. He just recently called the situation in the private credit market. He said there was a bunch of fraud and the collapse of a couple of the private credit lenders and hedge funds in the States and also in Canada. And he said, where there's one cockroach, there's always more. Meaning, like, if there is risk and fraud going on inside of one of these firms, is probably going on in most of these firms. Later, another one of his colleagues of a similar stature came out and asked, like, are these cockroaches or are these termites? Like, is the system rotting from the inside out? You have the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, Sarah Breeden. You can look at this article I read in The Guardian earlier this week. She is quoted as saying she is losing sleep at night over these compounding risks that are building up in the system. You have the governor of the Bank of England, or Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, is giving speeches about compound risks that we can't see, in particular in private credit. Governors of banks don't say they're losing sleep. Like, this is not, they are extremely measured people. They do not wave their hands and get out the red string. They use very measured, coded language, and for Sarah Breeden did not say I'm losing sleep accidentally. Jamie Dimon did not say where there's one cockroach, there's more accidentally. And so, whether or not I've successfully landed any of this off the cuff on my morning dog walk, I don't know. I hope that I have. I will attempt to get this out in writing as soon as I can, but between some big stuff I have going on in the other parts of my life and sort of the stuckness of getting this out in words on paper, I just wanted to try. I just wanted to see. I just wanted to, like, experiment with doing videos. I hate doing these. And I think Substack's about to become, like, video dominant, and I think the entire algorithm is going to rely on video soon. And I just want to know what you think, what you see. I want to be in dialogue about this because, I don't want to be alarmist. I don't want to be hand-raisy. I don't think that helps anything. And I'm tracking all this stuff, and it's a lot. There's, like I said, there's so much more than what I even said here. I'm trying to use this, like, metaphor about compound risks in the natural environment to help us maybe, like, understand the like these really opaque and complex dynamics going on in our economic environment that are really hard to see. And honestly, like, most people don't care, and I get it. It's like who it's like such a niche population that is going to listen to 5 hours of finance committee meetings, right? But this shit is very important. It's very important, and I don't know what happens from here, but I do know that the RCMP commissioned a sort of, like, call it a market intelligence report, which is the work that I used to do, which is, like, part of how I, besides my special interests and my autism and my human geography, my, like, economic geography obsession, that was my degree, and I've never stopped caring about this stuff and reading and learning. Besides all of that, it's like there are people way smarter than me that are identifying really problematic risks right now, really big, dangerous risks right now. And I have this background in market intelligence. I understand how to put these puzzle pieces together. And the RCMP hired a firm to do a essentially market intelligence report for them, a risks report, about the risks facing Canada domestically and the sort of security risks that we're going to face. I think it was in 2024 they commissioned this, and one of the top risks that came out in this report, it was supposed to be top secret, but it got leaked. One of the top risks was for domestic unrest from economic, like the failure of the economic system. And, you know, subduction zone earthquakes, they happen in perfect storm conditions when too much tension is built up in the system. In ecology, there is this model, it's called the panarchy. If you look it up, it looks, my friend Julian once explained it to me on a beach. I can still remember sitting there with him drawing the infinity loop in the sand. So like a number 8, turn it on its side, the infinity loop, it goes like this. And panarchy basically says like all ecological systems go through this predictable cycle where they store up all of this energy to their maximum carrying capacities. Like imagine a forest, right? Like after forest fire, the fungus returns, and then the small plants, and on and on and on until the forest is like giant and massive, and you have, huge old growth cedars and all this shit, and the forest sort of reaches its maximum carrying capacity. It reaches the maximum tension that it can hold, essentially. And then there goes through a conservation phase, there's like a build-up phase, there's a conservation phase, and then there's a release phase. And all complex systems go through the same pattern. It just is. It's just a fact. And I believe we are either in or about to be in the release phase of the complex system, our complex socioeconomic system. And when that happens, not if that happens, when that happens, if we are not prepared, if you read the news, there is no reporting anywhere, there's no evidence anywhere that our governments are doing anything to prepare us for this. Without adequate preparation, it gets very messy. Very messy. And with social trust the way that it is, and with economic vulnerability at the way that it is, with the wealth gap, with 60% of households $200 away from insolvency, with food and livelihoods and homes on the line. Yeah, I think it gets worse before it gets better, and I don't want to be alone, I guess, in that conversation. So I also, the other thing is every single complex system, after it releases, there's a renewal phase. So I certainly don't mean to be a doomer, and a lot of the other things that I'm going to be writing about and think about and want to show you are about, we talk about this all the time, is better possible futures. It's the new good life, and you can see evidence of it. It's springing up in the cracks. It's emergent, and it's fragile, and it's trying its fucking damnedest, and it will happen. And it's just like, also it's kind of unavoidable to go through this release. And so how do we carry each other through that? How do we restore relationality? How do we deal with this at the level of our communities? Because that's where we're gonna need to deal with it, right? Like, we need to get to know our neighbors again. We need to build our internal ability to be with discomfort and uncertainty. We need capacity to tolerate really high levels of discomfort, such that we do not make choices that increase our risk and increase our exposure to really unfortunate things. And so, you need a lot of capacity for decision making, and for choosing nonviolent paths, and for choosing you need to be able to keep your wits about you. You know, we make better decisions, we take better actions, we have the capacity to be more loving toward ourselves and each other when we have the internal capacity for uncertainty. You know, my publication is named Fuck I Love You, and that was very much on purpose. Like, that was about love ethics. That was going back to bell hooks. Like, love is not a fluffy concept. It's not a romance novel. It's not a feeling. It's things that you do. It's reciprocity. It's choosing to invest in other people and yourself at the same time. It's learning how to say both and. It's learning how to figure out what win-wins are. We haven't been trained how to do that. Systems based on dominance and control and hierarchy, like we currently live in, they do win-lose, right? Zero sum. More for me, less for you. And what is trying to emerge, what I see trying to emerge, are love ethics. And love ethics are practiced. This entire complex system, synthetic risk transfers and buy now, pay later, and like all of this like shit that's like so abstract that runs our lives, all of that comes out of cultural ideas about how the world should work. These are just all based on ideas of like economic models. Like, oh my God, I could spend so long telling you about Milton Friedman and neoliberal economics, and like all of like those are just ideas. They're just ideas. They're not real. They're like, we have better ideas. Milton Friedman is the economist like most responsible for neoliberal economics, and there's this quote of his that I used to be able to recite off by heart, and maybe if it wasn't for this plane engine in my ear, I can't see what I can't see what you can see when I turn the camera around. I think I'm doing a really shitty job, but he has this quote about how only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. And when that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are laying around. And it is our job to make sure to keep those ideas alive, to make sure that the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And so, fuck I love you, Philly, everything. You know, I do write often about the problems, and that's the both and. It's like, I feel like we have to be able to honestly see where we are so that we can chart where we're going. And so I want to help create ideas that make the politically impossible become the politically inevitable, because we are in a crisis, even if it hasn't tipped into the, you know, even if the Megathrust magnitude 9 quake has not actually occurred yet, like, it's coming. And I want to make sure there are ideas laying around that don't put us back in this situation, because every time we've had these like foreshock ruptures of the system, because the system, the design of our social and economic systems, this shit is inevitable. The continuation of crises that just get these band-aids slapped over top of them, they'll just keep happening until fundamental change occurs. And for that fundamental change to occur, we have to be different internally as individuals. We have to have different values. We have to be practicing a different culture so that it does seem inevitable that we should have systems based on reciprocity, and that we should have, you know, care at the center of our economics. And that takes honest assessment and honest dialogue about where we are and where we could go, and, you know, what are the new shoulds. And so I want to be in that dialogue with you. I want you to know what a subduction zone is, metaphorically and literally. I want you to know what's happening on the North American plate and what's happening on the oceanic plate. And I want you to know how they're interacting, because I want us to be able to do something about it together. I want us to make sure we have our 72-hour emergency kits. And I want to make sure there's better ideas laying around. So I fucking love you. I want to hear what you think about all this. And if you stayed, if you're still here, I especially fucking love you. And yeah, tell me what you think. Okay, bye.